Welcome back to the Rewind. I'm your host, Spencer Tracy. It's good to be back for episode 30. Really excited for my partner here today, my fellow Padre alum, my fellow Sarah Fryer worker, working at the school newspaper down there. Ian Napetian, welcome to the show.
Sweet, Spencer. Thanks so much. Really happy to be here and awesome talking to you about some baseball. So looking
Yeah,
forward to
man.
it.
Yeah, growing up, rooting for the opposite teams on the Bay. I'm myself a Giants fan, as you all know. Ian, an A's fan. He got to see some glorious years, but unfortunately, they're up in Sacramento. But he's staying loyal.
Yep.
That's the kind of guy Ian is, staying loyal. So we got the AL West today. We'll be breaking down each team in this division. Kind of a fun division, Ian. Kind of a fun division.
Yeah, no, I think, every season, at least for the last couple of years, it's felt like the AL West has definitely had a couple of teams that are always trying to make a push. I think obviously for the last decade or so, it's been the Astros really kind of, being the head honchos of the West. But now you see the Mariners, the Rangers in recent years also maybe how are they going to rebound this season? Obviously, the A's are always a question mark. And then you got the Angels kind of trying to figure things out. But the West should be interesting. I mean, a lot is going on. And I think this is definitely one of the divisions to definitely look out for here this season. So,
100%. What team do you want to start with? I'll give you first pick.
gosh, man, I don't know. I'll save the A's for a little later. We can
Okay, I like
start at
that.
the top if you want. Let's start at the top with
Okay.
the Mariners
Let's
because
go to
I
Seattle.
yeah,
Lovely. Fun
Pacific
off season.
Northwest.
Yeah, fun off season for a team who made a little run and kind of flirted with some World Series hopes for their team, including a historic year from the guy in the squat, Cal Raleigh. Um, their big offseason addition. Off the bat, they wasted no time. They brought back Josh Naylor on a 5-year, $92.5 million contract. I mean, an interesting trade going to get a reliever and trading away a highly viewed Harry Ford, a catcher in their program, following a historic season from their catcher. So probably expecting Cal Raleigh to be behind the dish for quite some time there. They added a couple guys like Andrew Kitzner, Rob Refsnyder, who's a good platoon right-handed hitter, and will probably stick in the outfield. And then they weren't done. In January, the Brendan Donovan sweepstakes ended when they went and snagged him from St. Louis, giving away a couple notable prospects, a couple pitchers, and a draft pick. I don't know how that really works. I didn't know you could trade draft picks, but anything stand out to you there, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Brendan Donovan pickup, I think, is definitely big for the Mariners. I mean, talking about them, they've got a great offense, probably, one of the top five lineups in baseball, one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion, pitching staffs in baseball. And then I think really what you needed for the Mariners, I guess maybe what they were wanting is a little more depth, right? Guys that they could kind of put in and take out a little bit, especially, a very long season this last year going into this year, trying to make a very similar push. It's interesting with the Mariners, right? I think they're bringing back a lot of key talent as well. Losing Harry Ford was definitely interesting. I think long term that'll definitely have an effect for the Mariners, but obviously you've got a guy in Cal Raleigh who smacked 60 plus homers last year. And no, but I think the Mariners played it safe. They brought back the guys that they needed to. Bringing back Josh Naylor was important, and then adding some depth and some veteran leadership in Brendan Donovan, I think was really all the Mariners needed to do.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the Naylor bring back with was an interesting one, but kind of cool. A sneaky 30 stolen bases for the guy.
Yeah,
Usually like a power back corner guy.
yeah,
So very interesting there. Ben and Donovan one was a big one for me. I think it really they love to just kind of plug and play because they've got some open spots at second base, third
hmm
base. Losing Eugenio Suarez, the Reds in the offseason.
yeah.
So being able to plug and play him, he's just a great guy, great bat that just gets on base in front of Cal Raleigh, as you mentioned, in front of this exciting lineup, in front of Randy Arozarena, Julio Rodriguez, and a Josh Naylor, but also plays exceptional defense too.
Yeah.
He can really hold down the fort wherever you place him, probably more specifically at second base. Looks like Fangraphs has a Cole Young here at second. But yeah, Cole Young. I don't know too much about Cole Young, actually. Uh,
Me
but
either, frankly.
yeah, he's supposed to start at second, so I guess he's the guy. I know they
Yeah.
have Colton Emerson, a very exciting prospect. I believe in the top 10, most of those rankings. At third base, but I'm not sure if he's a guy you wanna. But when you're contending for a World Series, it gets tough to really rely on these up and coming
Yeah.
prospects. But Ian, who's an X factor on this on this in this starting lineup before we head to the pitchers?
I don't know. I just feel like Josh Naylor is a guy that he's going to bring energy to your lineup. You know,
Yeah,
you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. He obviously a breakout season this last year, had some really good years in Cleveland as well before moving over to Seattle. But I don't know. Whenever I look at this lineup, obviously Julio Rodriguez is a guy that's going to stand out. You know, kind of depends if he gets off to a good start or not, if he can stay healthy and all that. But I think for Josh Naylor, I think he's someone that you look at and you're just like, all right, you know, there's not a lot of guys you could pitch around in this lineup, right? You have a lot of offensive threats here, you know, up and down the order. Even having JP Crawford in the 9 hole, you know, he may not be your go-to guy that you're needing a 2 out base knock to take the lead in the 8th inning, but he's someone that can stretch the order and make it hard for opposing teams and opposing pitchers and opposing managers to say, "Hey, should I take out my pitcher now or should I leave him in for the next couple guys?" Right? I think that's what this Mariners team is really good with is their lineup construction and making it difficult for opposing teams to pitch to them. And so that to say, I think Josh Naylor for me is just a guy that one I love watching, and two I think he's just got some awesome energy that he brings to the ballpark. So
love it. Yeah, definitely a loud bat, and as I mentioned, that was acquired in the trade deadline. That really helped make their run, including sneaking some bags. I think that just was blew my mind at the time. 30 stolen
yeah,
bases. He was stealing them like he was Billy Hamilton. Um, for me, I think the biggest storyline or something I'm gonna be really interested in is Cal Raleigh has this historic season, and it's kind of awkward to set his expectation because it's not realistic to say, "Oh, okay, now that's your standard because you've done it before."
yep,
That's gotta be such an outlier of a year. In all due respect, I'm sure he's still gonna have, like, a 40 plus season, but the numbers that he put up, at that position that is just so it is just so wear and tear.
yeah.
I mean, 60 home runs, 700 plate appearances, almost played 162 games, 161 WRC plus. Like, what's the expectation for Cal Raleigh in season
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, again, he's not going to be a guy that's going to hit for average, right? I mean, this year, and I get, you know, again, this is in my opinion why he rightfully didn't win MVP was the average, and I know that might be a little ancient way of thinking, but you can hit 60 homers, but if you're batting 230, obviously it's not going to match up against what Aaron Judge is doing. But I don't know. I think for Cal Raleigh, I think you're gonna expect probably, you know, 40 homers, you know, somewhere right around there, a good bat, but again, I don't think you can really rely on him to get, you know, the doubles and just the base knocks that you might need from somebody like him. Again, I think one thing that was tough this year was that where other guys dropped the ball, Cal Raleigh also kind of made up for that, right? And so how is that gonna maybe have an inverse effect where if Cal Raleigh drops off, who else is gonna be able to step up to try to produce what he did this last year? Because again, you're just playing the odds game. You're probably not going to get another 60 home run season from Cal Raleigh. As fantastic of a catcher as he is, as great of a lineup as this Mariners lineup is, you're just not going to get that. And so I think for Seattle, it was great for them to have had that last year, but you need to go in expecting more from your other guys as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a lot of numbers to replace. Maybe Brendan Donovan's that guy. Let's switch over to the rotation. As you mentioned, this rotation is if not the best, it's a top three. Brian Wu tops it off as the ace. Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, and Bryce Miller, who I think a lot of people are high on. The bottom of this rotation could be the aces on a lot of teams, or at least a really really good second or third guy. Um, I just came out with my top 10 starting pitchers. You can check that out at the rewind underscore pod on Instagram. Brian Root came in at 10. He is just an innings eater. I don't have the stat in front of me, but I believe he was joined some kind of list of consecutive quality starts, which I believe is what, 6 innings, three
Six
runs or
innings, three.
less.
Yep.
Yep. In a row, and it was in the late teen, like it was I don't know, 18, maybe even 20s. It might have even been 20s. But this kid just eats innings and just gives you quality starts. Like he is one of the few guys where every time he takes the bump, you know you have a given chance to win games, and that's why he was in my top 10. Anyone else stand out to you, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you talk about the depth that this pitching staff has, and I totally agree with you. I mean, whenever I talk about the Mariners to either colleagues or friends, I always look at Logan Gilbert and say to have Logan Gilbert as your number 4 says that you've got a pretty dang good pitching staff, right? I mean, he is somebody that you'd love to see go out as your number 4. If that's the case, then you're in really good shape, right? And like you said, I think one thing that I love about Brian Wu and what I like to look at pitchers too is guys that are just going to eat up innings, right? Over the course of 162 games and plus that for the Mariners, hoping that they're going to get back there, right? Um, you can't put too much workload on those relievers too early, right? You need guys that are gonna be able to take the ball every 5th day and go out there and go 6 innings, maybe even 7. You're a Giants fan. I mean, you talk about Logan Webb, right? I mean, just Mr. Consistent. Not just consistent, but he excels at his role. And I think that's one thing that can be such an anchor, especially at the start of a season. And I think Seattle really has that. George Kirby, really great pitcher. I think there's certain times where he tends to struggle. I think location for him is something that I mean, location is something that for a lot of pitchers kind of can go up and down, but George Kirby's somebody that I really like watching as well. But I mean, this is a starting staff where you look at it up and down and you just say this is exciting. It's exciting to see. You hope they can stay healthy throughout the season. You get to see a whole season of these 5 guys. And then obviously pitching with a lineup that the Mariners have, it definitely takes off some pressure on these guys too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always great to know you have a good pitching because you just have to ask your offense to score what, 3 or 4, maybe 5 runs every now and then.
Yep.
That is puts a lot of pressure off your offense.
Yeah.
All right, projections. The Fangraphs has the Mariners winning 91 games at the top of the division this year. They won 90 games last season. Are you too high on? Are you going over on that, under on that, or you think 90 is just right?
I think 90 is
90
just right.
wins.
I don't think they're gonna get over 90. I mean, I don't know. I think when it comes to wins and losses, it's kinda hard for me to, like, think of an exact
Right.
number, but I would say 90 is probably good. I mean, what they finished last year, 80 or sorry, 90 and 72.
Yep.
Um, I would consider at least considering the other teams in the AL West, what other teams have done or haven't done as well. I think the Mariners are set up for a really successful season, and I mean it's this isn't a novel idea or a novel thing to say, but they're the pick to win the AL West. I mean, they're an exciting team. They've got one of the best lineups, one of the best pitching staffs. And for them, hopefully they can go try to chase their first World Series again. So
Yeah, it's I don't see them up in Dodger territory. I just gave the Dodgers 95 wins in my last
yeah,
episode with Gabe. I don't see this team taking a step back. I think, as you mentioned, they brought back Naylor. Wu was dealing with some injuries at the end of the year, and they were still able to roll and clinch that NL West spot.
yeah,
Um, so I like this team a little north of 90. I'm not going to go anything too crazy. I'm going to say 92.
yeah,
I think the division is getting better, which makes me a little worried
yeah,
to go over on this, but I'm gonna say 92 is a good spot
yeah,
for this
yeah.
team.
I like it.
Definitely the favorites to take home the AL West crown, which is a good change of pace. It's been the
Yeah.
Rangers and the Astros for too long now.
It has been. It
All right.
has been. A lot of Texas teams, man.
Yeah. Yep. As you know. All right. We went to the top. Let's cool ourselves down. Let's go to the bottom of the division. Let's go down to Anaheim, the little brothers of Los Angeles to the Los Angeles
Yeah,
Dodgers. The Anaheim Angels, interesting offseason. They started things off with an aggressive note. They traded for Grayson Rodriguez, a former top pitching prospect down in Baltimore, giving away Taylor Ward, who only had one more year of control. However, Grayson Rodriguez is coming off some arm injuries. They signed former pitching stud in Toronto, Alec Manoah, who has since kind of fallen off a little bit. They traded for Von Grisham with Boston, little fun shortstop. Made some bullpen moves with Drew Pomeranz and Jordan Romano, and Yohan Moncada to help their infield depth, and then help themselves with Jose Siri on a 1-year deal as well. Interesting offseason. Ian, what are your notes here?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the Angels, it's a bit playing it safe. I mean, there's not a lot that they can do. You know, I mean, I definitely don't think that. I mean, they're trying to rebuild, obviously, and a team like the Angels, they don't have the facilities right now to really go make any ginormous moves. They've still got Trout on the big 12-year deal that he signed way back, and then finally working through that Rendon catastrophe, right? And no, I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is kind of just what I expected from the Angels. I think you're trying to find ways to plug and play. You know, I think one of the highlights is Zach Neto trying to just see what he can do after last year. 26 homers was massive from a guy like him playing short. Definitely did not expect that. And then again, Joe Adell, 37 homers, but only hitting 230. You know, again, for me, that's not my ideal, bat in the lineup. But if that's what you've got, then you got to build around that, right? And Yohan Moncada, interesting. I don't think he's going to do anything great for you necessarily. But again, this is one of those years where the Angels are in between. They're working through some kinks. They're working through some of these wrinkles, um, and I wouldn't expect anything too crazy from them this season.
Yeah, trading away Taylor Ward, you're letting go at least 30 bombs from that power and in right field too. Maybe that was because they didn't trust Joe Adell's defense in center field, so they moved him over to a corner. No one really knows what you're going to get from Mike Trout
Yeah,
when he's on the field. Obviously, he's a very different player now, which is sad to say. You get some help in the rotation. We'll get to that. You talked about Neto. I love Zach Neto. He's one of the more underrated shortstops in the league. 115 WRC plus last year. He was great. Logan O'Hoppe was really fun for a while. The defense is he's a complete opposite of Patrick Bailey.
yeah,
If you're a Giants fan, he can swing it, man. He's got exciting pop. That ball just flies off his bat. But he's a little bit of a liability in the squat. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops, if he develops in that sense. Health is also an issue for him. Um, Nolan Shanawell is a really funny story and a great story to just explain the Angels organization just in a nutshell. Drafted in when's the draft? June,
yeah,
typically?
yep,
June.
yep,
Made his debut in September call-ups. So he was drafted, and 2 months later, he made his debut. They wasted no time in bringing him up, and he kind of struggled, as you would imagine, going from college to the professional to the top level. But he's more your speed, and this is a guy
yeah,
who just wants to put the ball in play. He only hit 260 last year, but he had 275 his
yeah.
rookie season. So with the 402 on base percentage, granted that was only 29 games, but he's shown that he can be a starting first baseman. We're heading into year 4 though, so he's had 308 games under his belt. I think I'd like to see him start taking steps forward. As you mentioned, this Angels team is in the rebuild phase, so I think that would be a huge component to this team moving forward.
No, for sure, and you kinda talk about it, right? That 3rd or 4th year, it's kind of, I mean, I don't wanna say it's make or break because baseball guy, you can kinda
Right.
have, better seasons later on in your career and kinda have a turnaround, but, for young guys like this, especially coming up quickly out of college, right? I think it's really important that you get, if they're up there, that you keep them there and try to give them some good reps. I think then putting them back down sometimes could either be a knock on confidence or then they can't find their way back up. Whereas if you put them up young, right, and they kind of have to deal with the major league talent up there, they have to adjust, right? And even if that takes a couple years, that's going to do them a whole lot better, I think, than leaving him in the minor league system. And I think for a guy like Shanuel, um, it is one of those years where I don't wanna call it a make or break, but it's one of those where you wanna see him have a really big step forward, to then kinda get you excited for the years to come, right? And especially for an Angels team that doesn't have a lot of bright spots to look for, right? I mean, it's nice to have Trout. You want him to be healthy. Him playing center is something I'm very interested to see, at his age and with the injuries like you've mentioned. But I think it's time for the Angels to again kind of start putting their eggs into different baskets of younger players, the new wave of talent as well. You've got something good with Neto. Joe Adell showed some pop this last year, and if you can bring in a guy like Nolan Shanuel and bring him back, and if he can continue producing, then you've got something to at least build for and try to keep going forward. So
Yeah, it's all the fan base wants. They have not
yeah,
seen any steps forward over the last couple years, so they're just looking for some sign of moving forward. The rotation doesn't get any sexier. We got Kikuchi on the top of the step here. He's going to lead things. And then you've got Jose Soriano, who's got some nasty stuff, very high velocity guy, flirts with triple digits, struggles to stay on the field. And again, he has that control. If anyone throws in the hundreds or high 90s, you're going to run into some control issues. Reed Detmers, I've heard people are still pretty high on. I still think Grayson Rodriguez can still be good in this league and climb his way up the rotation. I don't not really sure about the Alec Manoa. I think it's just kind of a why not? No one else is going to
yeah.
pick him up. We've got an open spot. Um, that's kind of that's how I'm looking at this rotation.
Yeah, it's the Alec Manoa thing is it's low risk, high reward, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
pick him up and he does great, then great, right? And I kind of obviously, winning is not a top 5 priority for this organization, and so they're gonna try to make whatever moves possible. But again, we kind of talked about it, and I said it a couple times, but all these moves are just safe. There's nothing out there that you kind of look at and say, you know what? Maybe there's something there. Maybe there's a reason that they're going for these guys. I mean, they're making a push here, right? I mean, they gave a 1-year contract to Kurt Suzuki, who, yeah, I mean, I think was a really good player. I love seeing another catcher being a manager because catchers know every single little bit of the game. But again, it's kind of like, all right, you're bringing them in here on a 1-year deal, one that doesn't give them a lot of confidence to maybe try to make some moves with guys that he wants to have because he's only on a 1-year deal. But also it that plays into that idea of just playing it safe, right? All right, is this going to be a transition period? Is Kurt Suzuki only going to coach 162 games, right? Is this what we're looking at, right? And I'm not saying you got to give him a big old contract, but I think if you want direction, I think the best place to start is either bringing in a player or bringing in a new manager and giving them a contract. And they did the latter, but didn't give them the contract. And so I think in that sense, Kurt Suzuki doesn't have a lot to work with here. This isn't necessarily his team, right? Moving forward, he doesn't know what he's going to be controlling. And again, I think that just kind of played out with the roster. I mean, you look at these guys, Drew Pomeranz. I don't know how the guy's still pitching. I remember watching
yeah.
him when I was
Seriously.
an A's fan, and when I was younger watching A's games, and I was like, man, this guy had a couple years in Colorado, went to the A's, went around the league for the last several years, and then had a not a breakout season, but had a heck of a season with the Cubs, right?
Yeah.
And but I don't think Drew Pomeranz is the guy to bring in because I don't think Drew Pomeranz is going to do that again, right? Again, these moves, there's not a lot of. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of thought to it. It's just, hey, who's available, and let's see if we can beefing up our roster. And unfortunately, I think for the Angels, that's just what this season's going to be.
Yeah, my parents just got home upstairs, so the dogs are barking if you can hear that. But your Suzuki point is really important, and going to our favorite movie, Moneyball, the famous line, "A 1-year contract means the same to a as a
Yeah,
coach as it does a player." There's not a lot
yeah,
of there's not a lot of faith in that, right? You give those
exactly,
long terms,
exactly.
like we're betting on you, we're putting the chips in. Yeah, it just seems like there's not a ton of moves to really say like, "Oh, we missed on like now we have this bad contract," or, you can't flame them for that, but you can flame them for not being too aggressive. So,
Yeah.
extremely well said. The Angels are coming in hot with projected 72 wins this season. Are you over or under, or are you right on the spot with that?
Gosh, what 72 wins last year? They had 72. No, that's probably I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe even a little less. I don't know. I just don't think much of their pitching staff. I really think that this pitching staff is going to struggle, and unless their offense can stay healthy, they're not going to produce a lot of runs. I mean, again, Mike Trout's going to have to be healthy. Are you going to get the same season out of a Zach Neto? Or are you going to get the same season out of a Joe Adell? Right? You love to see 37 homers, But I think in baseball now we see so many kind of flash in the pans, right? Guys that break out for a season or two, get a contract, and then they're duds. There's a lot of what ifs for this team offensively. If guys are going to produce, if guys are going to stay healthy. I think the only consistent in my head is that this Angels pitching staff just isn't going to be nearly good enough to keep to keep their offense in the game, to be completely honest with you. So I think 72 is good. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even maybe a little less. But again, you know what? It's a new era, at least for 1 year with Kurt Suzuki. Maybe he'll bring in a different feel, a different vibe in Los Angeles. And again, I mean, it's I don't know. It's the Angels. They haven't shown a lot of charisma or character over the last couple of years. I think it's just going to be again a lot of the same.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the presence behind home plate really translates to the knowledge of a manager.
Yeah.
I I agree, man. Like there's not enough like Joe Adell jumping up 17 home runs from 24 to 25 season. Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Shanuel, we just talked about him. Neto, exciting, right? Great shortstop. Ohapi still has some question marks. Pitching doesn't move the needle. It didn't do too much from last year. New manager. I think the division just got better, and
Yeah.
they didn't do enough to get better. So I'm gonna take the under. I'm gonna say this team wins 70, 69, 68 games.
Yeah.
That's what I'll do. All right,
Yeah.
let's take a quick break and then let's run into our next team. The Houston Astros had an interesting year last year. Um, their offseason was a little strange, kind of quiet, didn't do too much. They signed Tatsui Imai over the offseason in the international free agency. They went and added some lower level guys, Kevin Biggio to a minor league contract, traded for Joey Loperfido, who had some moments in Toronto. And then they got my guy, Kai Wing Tang from San Francisco, who I was not particularly high on. I didn't love the news that he was going to be a fifth rotation option. So when he got traded away, I was a little bit relieved. But apparently he's pitching well in spring training, so that's good news for Houston. Am I's the big fish here? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, no, I think the Astros brought back all the talent that they needed to. I think obviously, for them, I think starting pitching definitely will be interesting without Framber Valdez. Him being there the last several years is again, he's been one of those anchor guys that you can just give the ball to, and you know exactly what you're going to get from him. I think what's good though is that you can kind of look toward a younger guy in Hunter Brown. He's been up in the majors for a couple of years, and obviously he's somebody that you're going to want to if you're an Astros fan, you're gonna want to you're gonna want to see him in Houston for several years to come, right? And he's gonna be their number one this year, and then Christian Javier as a number two. But I think pitching is gonna be interesting. You've got some really good relievers as well. I think Josh Hader coming back is great, and then again, Jeremy Pena's coming off of a really great year. Christian Walker's coming off of a serviceable year, power and hitting
Yep.
wise. You're getting Jose Altuve back for another season. Correa obviously finished the season with the Astros last year, and he's still there. So I think the biggest thing that stands out to me about this Astros team is kind of what's gotten them to the playoffs and deep into the playoffs and to the World Series the last several years is depth. I think they have guys that they can put at different positions. Should guys get hurt, should a couple pitchers go down, I do think that the Astros have enough guys to kinda, move some guys around and figure out what works. You're naturally gonna deal with a couple guys going down. I think Carlos Correa staying in Houston and, again, his veteran experience, I think, will add a lot to especially Jeremy Pena playing it short, things like that. But no, I think this team's got a great leadership, guys that have been there and done that. It's got that perfect mix between that veteran leadership, but also some of those new young guns that you want to see continuing to have success.
Yeah, having Jordan a healthy Jordan is gonna totally change the outlook of this roster. Um, Trading for Cam Smith right before the season, you give up Kyle Tucker, obviously, and he had a great year. But Cam Smith, coming up as a drafted as a third baseman, coming up as a third baseman, you move him to right field, and he fits like a glove out there. He played his athleticism translated. He played well defensively, and he swung the bat well. Tapered off a bit towards the end of the year, but and given it's his rookie year, there's a lot of reasons to be excited. I think they I think they're done with the Jose Altuve experiment in left field.
Yeah.
So I think he's gonna stay move him back to second, where I think is that's the right decision. Where it gets a little awkward is the one of the big fishes last year, and a guy I wanted the Giants to go get was Christian Walker, who was coming off a really, really great season in Arizona, and earned himself 20 million a year for a couple years in Houston. Just did not perform. He's a defensive first baseman that shows great pop and can definitely put the bat on the ball, keep that average at least a little bit above 250. Uh, but he didn't show any of that. I think it took him until a couple months into the season before he knocked his first homer in Houston. And they also have Isaac Paredes, who thrives on pulling home runs, and that left field wall could not be tailored more perfectly to him in left field, the Crawford boxes. But you've got Cray at third. Paredes is the third baseman. Maybe move him over to first. You invested a lot of money in Walker at first. No one's going to take that contract. Your hands are kind of tied. Where do you go with this? Do you maybe move him to second, DH him on an Alvarez day off, but you kind of want him to get at bats. So that's where it gets
Yeah.
murky. I don't know. Do you have like an idea on what you would do here if you're Houston?
I think I mean, I think you need to sit I think you need Walker and Paredes to just go after it, and whoever wins it, and then after that, you kinda have to make your decision. It's hard, right? I think, again, like you said, I mean, Walker shows a lot of pop, right? But the average this last year at what was it, 238? Yeah, 238.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think that's what you're looking for, right? Again, especially without Yordan Alvarez this last year, Astros were looking for runs. You know, bringing Yordan back, you want to see him as your everyday DH. I think there's too many guys and not enough spots at this point. And I don't know if this is something where maybe you offload him, at the deadline or something and just get rid of him. But it kind of depends, right? If Walker can get that average up and keep the power up, then great. But that's a big if for a guy that showed a lot of promise and then got the contract and just kind of flailed in the end of it. And so, and it's hard to you've given so much money to a guy who is 34, and then you have a guy in Isaac Paredes who's 27 years old, um, and really exciting, right? I mean, somebody that you're probably going to see in a Houston Astros uniform for years to come, right? And you're kind of like, all right, do we give him this opportunity? You put a young bat like him, someone that's got pop, someone that can, hit for average at least for now, into a lineup where there's other guys that are going to make it hard for opposing pitchers again, right? I think Christian Walker is a very big hole, a strikeout machine. Whereas I think if you put in Isaac Paredes, you can kind of play around with what you've got there. So
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be an interesting battle for playing time there, and an important one. But maybe they both hit. That would be a great problem for
yeah,
Houston. Over to the
exactly.
rotation, a funky one here for good and for bad. Hunter Brown makes it as the ace of this team, and he just came onto the scene last year. He looked good in 24 coming up, but last year he was showing like he had moments and stretches where he looked like he was the best pitcher in baseball. He flashed one of the highest WARs among all starting pitchers, finished seventh on my top 10 starting pitchers ranking. Because of that, I try to put in longevity and kind of prove it kind of stuff, but he's only really proved it for 1 year where he was a top guy. But it showed enough for me. Christian Javier is a fun one. He was another one of those really high level starters, but like back in 23, posted a low three, sub three ERA in 2023, and injuries, and just hasn't really gotten back to it. Maybe this is the year. If not, he might be running out of time with his chances in Houston. Tatsuya Mai was a very highly talked about international guy, and I think he signed within 80 hours of his free agency window. So, and he only landed on I pretty much a 1-year deal. It was a player option at the end of 26, I believe. So, if he has a great year, he can hit the market again and try and get some more money. If not, he can just keep taking in Houston's money. So, that's an interesting guy to keep an eye on. Lance McCullers dealing with a lot of injuries, so I'm not sure how much they can rely on him in the rotation. He is projected to be in the back end of the rotation, so that at least is something you can fill pretty easily if you have some depth. One that's interesting is a guy from Pittsburgh, Mike Burrows. I've heard a lot of positive buzz from this guy in Pittsburgh, and to get him in Houston, an organization that has done pretty well pitching wise. Um, they've been pretty successful in that department. He had 96 innings pitched last year. He had a 3.9 ERA, but a 24% walk rate. So he can definitely get those swing and misses. Doesn't walk a lot of guys, 7% walk rate. So very interesting. Ian, what do you make of this rotation?
Yeah, it's kinda built on like popsicle sticks a bit. I think it looks good with Hunter Brown at the top of it, but then after that, it's just it kind of falls off, right? I think you have an exciting Hunter Brown, and then you see an aging Christian Javier who's been there for a while, then Lance McCullers Jr., who's, trying to stay in the show for as long as he can, right? It's an interesting spot to be in. It is not the Houston Astros pitching staff that I think we're used to seeing, at least from the last decade or so. It's changed, right? They've offloaded a lot of guys over the last couple years. I think the Astros are going to heavily rely on their relievers. And after last season, I don't think I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It depends if they're able to make some changes. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it's exciting to have Hunter Brown, but then the drop off is pretty steep. And again, that's why again it goes back to the offense and saying, look, getting back a guy like Jordan is going to do a whole lot this year. If Christian Walker can start producing more, if Isaac Paredes can keep producing more, if those guys can go at it all season long and make it a hard decision to see who's going to play first base, then that's the exact problem that Houston wants to have, right? But this starting rotation, it's not something that I look at and am particularly excited about. I would say there's not a lot of there's experience, but where that experience is, the age kinda comes into play now, right? Again, I don't think much of Christian Javier and Lance McCullers anymore. It'll be interesting to see where the Astros are, come the trade deadline and kind of, come towards that playoff push time and see if they can make, any moves because I think that would obviously be a spot where they try to bolster up there and their bullpen. But outside of Hunter Brown, it's definitely interesting. And then also again with Imai, I think it's just unproven talent at the major league level, but obviously exciting to have. So
Yeah, maybe the unproven talent is the missing piece that we just aren't aware of. Who knows? The pitching definitely is the question mark here.
yeah.
Going into their projections via Fangraphs, they're coming in at 500 for a team who we've mentioned has a lot of past success over the last 5, 10 years, even um, has really ruled this division along with the Rangers. But coming in at 500, are we over under? Are we right on the spot here at 81?
I don't know. The thing is, I've always said the Astros are inevitable. At least over the last 8 to 10 years, they've always found a way to figure it out. I mean, even this last season, they won 87 and 75. They missed the postseason, but from my standards as an A's fan, that's fantastic. Um, I think the Astros will actually do okay this year. I mean, I don't think they'll be 500. I think they'll probably get to maybe 83 wins, 84 wins. I think it'll be similar to last year, to be honest with you. Um, there's something in that organization, something down in the water in Houston where they find a way. They're able to figure it out. I think again with that veteran talent that they have, I think that plays a lot of a bigger role than we think, especially when we look at the team on paper. And so I think that's going to be a big variable going into this season. So
Yeah, you may think it's weird that, you use that as a reason, just like the past history of an organization as a reason for them to be, successful or underperform in a season. It tends to pan out normally. Like it looked like the Guardians weren't gonna come, be anything near what they had been like a playoff contender, and then they went on this nuts run and they passed the Tigers in the AL Central. So some teams just have it in their blood. They're drinking different kinds of they're drinking different water. Um, 500 seems like a decent fit to me. I agree. I'm kind of straddling that right now, but you sold me. Like they're doing something different over there. They have some good pieces. I think Cam Smith might be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
Given they were all right last year without Jordan for majority of the year, I think that's gonna be a huge factor here. The pitching is worrisome, so I'm gonna give them 83 wins. That's where I'm
Yep.
gonna settle. All right,
Yeah.
let's carry on here to the final 2 teams. Probably the most anticipated team here. Let's go to the Athletics. First things first, Ian, are we calling them the Sacramento A's? Are we just calling them the A's? Like,
Just the A's,
I've
man.
heard
Just
I've
the
heard 2
A's.
sides. I've heard 2 sides here.
For now, it's just the A's. Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, it's the A's, and then if they even get to Vegas in 28, I don't know if we'll even be able to call them Las Vegas or not if they can't get the trademarks in time. So we'll have to
Yeah.
see with that. But no, it should be interesting. I mean, 2 more years in Sacramento at least. I mean, don't get me talking about relocation, or else I don't think we'll ever leave. But yeah,
Right.
no, the A's are definitely in an interesting spot this year. Um, I will always be excited to start the year, and then pretty quickly it's like, "All right, I'm back to earth. My feet are back on the
Yeah.
ground. I kinda know what I'm gonna expect," but, should be a fun second year playing at, Sutter Health Park, so
Yeah, an interesting offseason, a little bit more on the quiet side, but they had one firework with the Jeff McNeil addition via trade from the New York Mets, who seemed like they were just kind of cutting fat for a minute, but then they made some big pushes and some big roster additions, so they had a plan in place. Jeff McNeil, second baseman, utility guy, very ball in play heavy, that might thrive in that ballpark. They also added Mark Leiter to bolster that bullpen on a 1 year deal, and Aaron Civale to maybe fill in a rotation spot on a 1 year deal. They lost Jordan Rodriguez in that Mets trade for McNeil. Uh, Ian, you're going to talk about McNeil or the other two guys? Which one are you going with?
no, I'll start with McNeil. I think it's an interesting move. I think it's a total A's move. Bringing in a guy like Jeff McNeil just brings back Jed Lowry to, like, just in my head. It's a total Jed
Yes.
Lowry move, and I love Jed Lowry, switch hitter. I mean, that guy was he was consistent and he was serviceable. He was a sure glove at second base. You can move him around if you wanted to, but I think in this sense, again, I'm it's not that I'm happy that the A's had a quiet offseason, but I think it's one of those things where you look at what you've got. You maybe don't want to move too many things around. You're happy with the guys you have. You're happy with maybe the progress that you've been seeing in certain players. And I think at this point for the A's, I think that's perfectly okay, right? And I think bringing in a guy like Jeff McNeil, who has played in a big market, can kind of bring, again, I say it all the time, but can bring that leadership to a team that is so incredibly young, right? When you look
Very
at the
important.
A's and you think about leadership, the guy that stands out is Brent Rooker, right? And Brent Rooker, I think he made his debut back in 2017 or 2019, something like that, with the Twins. But he's been around the A's for a while, right? And so you don't really have anybody, at least in the batting order, that you can look at and say, yeah, this is a guy to learn from. This is a guy that's been here. He's jumped around. He's kind of conquered everywhere he's gone. Not saying that Jeff McNeil has been some tremendous guy his entire career, but he can bring a nice kind of just consistent piece to second base, where I think the A's have had a lot of holes in this infield, at least at second and third. Um, I wrote an article months back about how Matt Chapman, once the A's dealt Matt Chapman to Toronto, that I think the A's went through 27 or 29 different third basemen since then.
Oh no.
Uh, and it's one of those things where you're just like, you're obviously trying to find that new anchor at third, right? I think that's going to be a big hole this season too. I don't think Max Muncy is going to take a big step forward this year. You just had a lot of different guys trying to fill that position. But with that said, in terms of the offseason moves, I think bringing Jeff McNeil is great. Aaron Civale, I think, is good. Definitely past his prime in the sense of, he had a couple of good years a few years ago. But you're bringing in some talent that has been in the major leagues that I think you need. I think last year the A's relied heavily on a lot of their minor league guys, and coming up for their first seasons. You can have a couple good starts, and then you're going to hit a brick wall, and then you're going to slowly find ways to adjust. That's kind of what happened with Jacob Lopez, Luis Morales. I think those guys have a very bright future, whether it's for the A's or a different organization. But I think it's good to have those guys further back in your rotation, because those guys aren't threes and fours. They're hardly even fours or fives in your rotation. And I think it was a lot to ask from them last year, but bringing in Savali can definitely kind of bolster that starting rotation a little bit. And if Severino can do a little bit better at home, then you're looking at a completely different kind of landscape, I think, for the A's. It was really hard when you'd be at home and you'd see Severino, and it's just a constant slip and slide on the mound. Um, I mean, frankly, it doesn't
Yeah.
give me a lot of confidence if I'm watching. I'm like, oh, hey, Severino's pitching tonight. Where is it? Oh, it's in Sacramento. All right, so something's gonna
Yeah.
happen. I know that sounds silly to say, but
No,
you want
it adds
you want
up.
your guy to go out there and you want him to shove.
Yeah.
You wanna have confidence in the guy you're paying $67 million to over 3 years, to go prove that he's worth $67 million. And that wasn't it last year. On the road, it was good, and maybe, it's gonna take some time to change, but, again, like you mentioned, a bit of a quiet offseason for the A's, to say the least, but with that said, I think they like the talent that they have. I think they wanna give the talent that they have more reps. Again, I think if you look at it from a organizational standpoint, they're not trying to win next year. They're not trying to win this year or next year, right? You're trying to win in your second, maybe third year in Vegas. And I think if you need to suffer here for the next couple seasons, maybe get a couple more draft picks, all that stuff, but you give good reps to guys like Nick Kurtz, give more reps to your Jacob Wilsons, continue trying to get Soderstrom to where he was fantastic
Oh,
last year.
yeah.
If he can see that again, that's huge, right? I mean, Soderstrom learned how to play left field. He was, I mean, and that's not an easy thing to do for a guy that came up as a
As
catcher,
a
moved
catcher,
to
yeah.
first, right? I mean, you talk about somebody that is selfless and tried to learn a position for the team and did it. He's going to be the starting left fielder. Um, you know, the A's have the talent. It's a little raw. And I think again, because they're building more for the future and less of, the next couple years, I think having a quiet off season is actually going to benefit them more than bringing in guys and then benching the future guys that will be playing in Vegas.
Yeah, you hit the head on the nail with McNeil. It's an A's move. Why I really like him is I don't think the average is there anymore. He's not a 280, 300 guy. The defense is fine, 73 outs above average, but that walk to strikeout rate, 10% walk rate, 11% K rate. I look at this lineup. I want Nick Hertz just hit. Brent Rooker, just hit. Lawrence Butler, just swing it, right? Jeff McNeil's a guy who's going to eat pitches. Jacob Wilson's a guy who's going to eat pitches. That's all I'll say on Jeff McNeil. I think he should fit, and that leadership is very important. That does not show up on Baseball Savant on the
Oh,
stats. That's all in the locker room. That's behind the scenes. That's important. This
yeah.
is the big reason why I'm watching the A's for the next couple years, and I've said on past episodes, and you've highlighted this as well, reasonably so. This is going to be a very fun team over the next couple seasons to monitor. Tyler Soderstrom, 7-year contract, $86 million, signed through 2032. Jacob Wilson just signed as well recently for 7 years, signed through 2032. Lawrence Butler, 7 year, signed through 2031. Brent Rooker signed a 5-year contract, signed through 2029. Nick Kurtz in the works of a contract, rumor has it. I assume that's going to get done. I don't know when, but I'm assuming it's going to get done. No pitcher is under contract past 2027. The A's are supposed to move into 2028. Now, what does all this mean? They have their four best hitters on their team. Four of the five best hitters. Nick Kurtz is going to get under contract. Four of the five best hitters locked in on deals under $90 million for 6+ years through 2032. They're all in on this core. Like, this is the offense that's going to get us to where we want to be. That's going to accomplish our goals. As you mentioned, they're raw now, but
Yeah.
when they're getting paid 10, 15 million a year, and they're having Nick Kurtz is going to be he's going to win Silver Sluggers. He may be in some MVP races. Jacob Wilson might win some hitting titles. I mean, he's a Luis Rise coming up. But once you put him on the stove, let's cook this raw meat a little bit, and let's get this lineup is going to look really, really nice. And just maybe a year, maybe 2 years. I don't know, but once they get out of the offensive ballpark, as you mentioned, you need guys to shove behind this. They have no pitchers on the books after going into 2028 in that new ballpark. Hopefully they move in by then or whatever.
Yeah,
You get some pitchers then. You got Jamie Arnold coming up. You've got some fun arms. Like this roster gets
yeah,
really interesting. And then you look at your opponents. Like the Rangers they've got some fun talent. We'll get into them, but there are a lot of their guys are on the wrong side of their primes, on the wrong side of 30. Um, the Astros are kinda throwing things together as we speak. The Angels, I have no idea what they're gonna look like in 5 years, probably just like they have always been. This team is on a really fun trajectory. They're why I'm watching them for the next couple seasons because these guys are really fun to watch, and take at bats. There you go. There's
yeah.
both of our A's rants there.
No, exactly. It's interesting. I mean, you kind of, dove into the prospects a little bit, right? And again, I think one of the reasons why I'm okay with the Jeff McNeil pickup is the fact that you have Leo DeVries coming up in the system as well. The A's got him over from the Padres and the Mason Miller and JP Sears
Yes.
trade. He was the biggest prospect there, obviously, and could we see him at the end of 26? Potentially, maybe, probably more so 27. But you bring him up, you move Jacob Wilson to second base. You're not looking for a long-term second baseman to bring in, and so that's why I think Jeff McNeil works, right? You don't want to have somebody that you're giving out a big contract to, right? Especially in the infield for the A's where those spots are locked up. Then you mentioned Jamie Arnold, Gage Jump, Braden Nett, who was also in the Padres A's trade. Those are the top four prospects, and you say, no, the A's don't have anybody locked up for 28, and you just hope that next season then or the season after that, you start bringing in maybe some other talent, some veteran guys that who still have some more years left, so that then you can bring up the Jamie Arnolds and the Gage Jumps, and it's not like you just have three young guns as your top three guys, right? It is kind of interesting though because I do look at this A's team and I kind of look at the starting pitching of Luis Morales, Jacob Lopez, Gunnar Hoagland, he's been in the system for a long time, but you look at Morales and Lopez, and you say, all right, if these guys can take a big step forward, maybe those guys are the 1 and 2 in 2 years or in 3 years, and then that's the good time where you can really start seeing the jumps. You can start seeing the Arnolds then grow into what they're going to become. Again, the A's are an exciting team to watch this season, but even more exciting to follow for the season after, just like you said, Spencer. So,
Yeah. We haven't even mentioned Shea Langeliers, just like 60 seconds. What do you think about where does he fit into the future? They had him and Soderstrom coming up, was a little awkward, two catchers, right?
yep,
But as you said, they moved Soderstrom. He found a little home in the corner in left field.
yep.
And Langeliers looks like to be the catcher for the future. Like, where do you sit with him?
Yeah, no, I definitely think he's gonna go with the team to Vegas. I definitely think that's on the table. Obviously, he hasn't gotten that contract extension yet that he probably wants and was hoping for after the season that he had this year. What he had, 31 homers and
Yeah, he
hit
went up
I think near
nuclear.
270, 280 almost,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, what was it? 277 with 31 homers, and
Yep.
so I mean that is, I think for me, having watched Langoliers even when he was with the Aviators in AAA, I mean, he could hit bombs when he made contact, but he really struggled to make contact, right? And now you're starting to see that he actually hit for average and for power. And I think that's huge, right? I mean,
Yep.
again, like we were talking earlier with Cal Raleigh, you can hit 230 if you're going to hit 60 homers. You can hit 230 if you're going to hit 40, 45 homers, right? When you can get both, when you're a doubles machine like Langoliers has proven to be, with the power and the average, even when a catcher that can bat lead off too at certain times when he had a 3 homer game, I think, in Washington, D.C. earlier this year. I mean,
Mhm.
he's a guy that you can kind of put anywhere in the order, and also his defense is pretty good too. And so I definitely think he's gonna be a part of the future for sure. But yeah, like you mentioned, it was really interesting seeing him coming up alongside Tyler Soderstrom at the same time and seeing what the A's were kind of gonna do with those two catching pieces. And but I think for Soderstrom, I think it's worked out to his benefit. I think he'll also have a couple more years in the big leagues not having to play catcher, if he can keep playing at this level. But he's kind of, he's been his own salesman. He's been asked to go play somewhere, and he did it at a high level, and again, I think that's what makes this A's team exciting is that, at certain moments it's a bunch of misfits, but also the A's love their homegrown young talent too, which always makes it fun. So
And you look at a lot of teams that can build a dynasty, right? A lot of it
yeah,
is homegrown. You got to add some pieces here and there, free agency, trade deadline,
yeah,
whatever, but a lot of it is homegrown. The starting pitching rotation isn't as sexy as the lineup as we just talked about. Luis Severino tops it, it looks like. You got Jeffrey Springs, who's on the books the longest. Aaron Saval, the new addition. I'm hearing a lot of buzz about Luis Morales and what he can bring to the table and his
yeah.
potential as well. Who are one or two guys that you have thoughts on here?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to Morales, I think Jacob Lopez is the standout. I think he's I would say of all of our young pitchers, he's the one that's progressed the most and has shown it at the major league level. Let me bring up his stats here, but he's I don't know. It took him a second to get going when he got to the majors, as it always does.
Yep.
But he's a guy that last season made the adjustments pretty quick, and I think that was probably the biggest kind of bright spot was seeing how a young pitcher like him was able to make those adjustments at the big league level and not throw off his game and not get too much in your head of whether it's about mechanics or whatever, right? Because pitching is nuts, or the smallest thing can change everything for a pitcher, and especially when you're young, that's a big deal. And for Jacob Lopez, again, he's a guy that showed what he could do last year, gave us a good little glimpse of it, probably a little more than just a little glimpse, but someone that I think you're excited to see try to grow into his role. And I think again, having him as your fourth starter, it's going to take the pressure off of him. He's not going to be the tone setter. He's not going to be Jacob Lopez isn't going to be asked to go 6 innings every day, but can he give it to you? He can on his good day, he can, right? But he's still young. So I would say Jacob Lopez for sure. And then obviously, the A's have a lot of young guys coming up in their system. But yeah, I mean, Lopez and Morales, those are the two that I'd love to see take the biggest step forward. JT Ginn is also exciting, but he'll probably play more of a bullpen role, more of a reliever role. And then the back end of the bullpen is going to be a mess. But if you can get some of your starters to go deep, that should take care of some of it. So
Yeah, the sour side of giving up a Mason Miller. Obviously, you get Leo DeVries, the exciting shortstop, but you lose the best reliever in baseball. And you'll be covering El Paso, so maybe you'll get some rehab assignments from Miller,
yeah,
which I'm sure will be just as you anticipate. I got to see him live once when I went and saw the A's play the Phillies in Sacramento, which was a
nice.
treat. He gave up an absolute moonshot to tie the game to Kyle Schwarber with 2 outs. But they ended up winning it on a pretty wild walk-off. So it was a very memorable game. But I got to see Mason Miller live, and he's
Good.
electric. That glove rings for sure
Yep.
from the stands. Yeah, not a very sexy rotation, but Morales and Lopez, all you can ask for is just some confidence from your guys. Again, like you said, this is a very raw team. So the expectations aren't shooting through the roof. So you're okay with some question marks going into the year. Um, the projections for this team, 80 wins. It's been a while since the A's have been projected to get 80 wins. Where are
It has
we
been.
on this 80 win total here? Are we over under? Are we sitting right at 80?
I'm going 82 and 80, man. I'm going
All right,
82 and 80.
over 500. Let's go.
Yep, over 500. I'm going over 500 this year. I think seeing what the A's did last year, again, I think the A's took a step forward in certain regards, maybe not record wise, but they took a step forward in advancing the talent. And then I forget what month it was, but the A's lost, I think, 20 or 24 games. This is a big if, but you need to that typically doesn't happen in a season, right? That a team will lose 24 games in a month. I'm hoping that was an anomaly for the A's, and therefore I think I would love to see the A's go 82-80. I think there's a good chance that they can really make a push. I mean, it's a fun young team. This team has nothing to lose. I think that's also something where, you're not gonna there aren't any expectations for the A's. I mean, there are, but they're pretty mediocre, pretty low. And so you go out there and you're mediocre, well, that's exactly what you expected. Or if you go out there and you get better starts from Severino, you get better starts from Springs. Again, those guys coming back for the second season, again, they are going to make adjustments to Sacramento, right? They're going to find ways to pitch better at home. Uh, so our hitters that I mean, again, guys are going to find better ways to play. And again, with the experience that they got last year, moving guys around, seeing Nick Kurtz up for a lot of last season, I'm expecting them to take a step forward and move the needle just a little bit when it comes to the wins and losses. So 82-80 would be a chef's kiss for me. So
Yeah, you have to have confidence in your team. I get
yep,
it. I I like the line here. My biggest worry when I take teams on the under when I don't see them as a playoff team is right now we're looking at this roster, right? And we're grading this roster on what they're going to do for 162 games. Come July, if this team wants to sell, if the team that is not going to make the playoffs is going to sell, the team should get worse, therefore affecting their record. So I'm trying to keep that into account when I make these predictions. But they've locked up, like, almost all of these guys, and the few guys that are maybe movable, I don't think are massive, don't really move the goalpost for me too much. I don't know, I was leaning high 70s. This pitching just really worries me, but and also the sophomore slump is a thing for some guys. There's a lot of guys who
yes,
had to, like, Wilson and Kurtz really took over the Rookie of the Year voting. Kurtz obviously won it. Like, if those 2 guys regress, obviously, I think they're gonna be perennial all-stars, but if they regress a bit, this really hurts the strength of this team. But it's too easy to hit that ballpark. I'm buying in on what you say. They're gonna make some pitching adjustments. Let's go A's. I'm gonna take
uh,
them to win, I'm gonna go 80. I'm gonna join you. I'll go a little over
I like it.
500,
I
but
like
I'll
it.
I'll I'll go 80.
There you go.
Alright, let's take a quick break, and then let's dive into the Rangers. All right, welcome back. We have the final team of the AL West, the Texas Rangers. Um, this team had an interesting offseason. Obviously, Bochy departed, so they brought in Skip Schumacher, who was a former manager of the year with the Marlins, and then they did nothing in the offseason that following season. They missed the playoffs, and then they fired him because that's what happens when you win manager of the year. Um, is you get fired when you don't make the playoffs the next offseason. Anyways, the Rangers projected to get finished second in this division. What moves did they make to get to this spot? Some interesting ones. A little bit on the louder side compared to the rest of their fellow AL Westerners. Brandon Nimmo was traded over to the Rangers from the New York Mets, as well as Danny Jansen was signed on a 1-year contract. Alexis Diaz, Chris Martin, Austin Gomber, a big name in the Rockies Arenado to St. Louis trade. The other big fish, Mackenzie Gore, was traded from Washington over here to bolster this rotation. A very sexy ad for the Rangers. And then I had to throw this guy in here. Your buddy Mark Hanna signed a minor league deal. I
You
saw that in the
did.
transactions. I thought we had to throw
Yes.
that in there. Obviously, they give up a prospect haul for Mackenzie Gore, and they give up their old reliable second baseman Marcus Simeon, one of my fan favorites, one of your fan favorites as well. Uh, Love Marcus, a former an A's legend. Um, Interesting offseason. Where do you stand here, Ian?
Yeah, I think, losing Simeon is definitely tough. Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I buy in big time to kind of veteran guys like that, especially up the middle. But again, I think for the Rangers, they're trying to take that next step. And I think, this Rangers team, they've got good players, they've got great talent hitting wise and pitching wise, but I think this is one of the biggest teams where you say it comes down to health. Th if 1 or 2 guys in their rotation goes down, I think the rotation is shot. If one or two guys in their lineup goes down, I think that lineup is really going to struggle, right? We've seen it the last couple years. I mean, for first of all, Degrom's been in and out, obviously, but obviously trying to stay healthy as always. Nathan Eovaldi was healthy this last year. He went 11-3. That was great to see. If you're a Rangers fan, and again, I think that's why they've also bolstered their starting pitching is because they realize that. They realize that, look, we need guys. If we're going to make a push, we need to have this consistency, and we need to have the depth, right? I think when you look at teams like go to the postseason, not just make up but go deep, it comes down to pitching, but also depth. You find the most random guys. You find your Miguel Rojas who comes in and gives you a pinch hit, go ahead homer, right, in the World Series. Guys that you can put into your team, and you know that they can give you a little something. So no, I look at this team. There is a lot of young talent on there. Josh Young, Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter. Um, I think Evan Carter needs to have a strong season this year. I think he needs to find a way to bounce back. Langford can again continue to stay healthy. Same thing for Josh Young. That'll be huge. But yeah, again, and I think in an AL West where um, I definitely think the needle has been moved up and teams have gotten better, like you said. It's going to be competitive, right? I mean, the Rangers had to go out and make a couple moves, and they did, right? And I think pitching wise, it is a pitcher's park. There's some crazy configurations on the wall out there at Globe Life, but if having DeGrom, Evaldi, and Gore, and then again, kind of playing around with Leiter and Rocker still, that's kind of the interesting part. But having those guys as your first three, I mean, is definitely promising going into the season. If they can stay healthy, then I think the Rangers have something good there.
Yeah, yeah, let's start with the rotation. DeGrom obviously lights out, but again, this is
Yeah.
where the depth piece is gonna be super handy. This guy hasn't really proven he can pitch, a whole season or anywhere really close to that. But when he's on the bump, you feel very confident in winning that game. Nathan Evaldi is an absolute stud. I think he's disgusting on the mound. Mackenzie Gore has been an ace for the last, 2 seasons. So putting him at third is great. Leiter and Rocker, it's interesting, right? They've both shown flashes. They were absolutely dominant in their Vanderbilt days, but they've overcome some injuries since then, and they're a little bit on the younger side to be going through all of these injuries. So that is a cause for concern, especially since it's not like they're DeGrom, where, when they're on the field, they're providing a really encouraging start. I don't really know what I'm getting from those guys, and that makes me nervous to put them in the rotation when they are healthy enough to be in the rotation. They could be X factors to see how far this team can go deep in the at the bottom of this rotation. Cody Bradford and Jordan Montgomery and Austin Gomber are interesting names as depth pieces because you can be creative with how you use them, whether it's the bullpen. They could even be guys that can get open for if you're trusting your bullpen enough. They can get really creative in that sense. Skip Schumacher obviously knows a thing or two, former manager of the year, so he can kind of play with his gadgets there. This rotation is very interesting. The biggest X factor has to be health, as you mentioned. Um, yeah, it has the potential to be, yeah, the floor and the ceiling are so wide, maybe one of the widest I've ever seen. So, uh, that'll be a very interesting part in this 2026 season. We mentioned the Simeon trade. Obviously, Josh Smith will be taking over. There, people anticipate he'll win the role there. Interesting move there. It seems like they really wanted to focus on offense.
Yeah.
Nimmo obviously gives you that offense. Simeon was an Iron Man, and he was really strong defensively. The Mets were looking for defense, so you kind of make that clean swap. Um, so yeah, and there's a couple other guys here that I'm also looking into. Evan Carter, you mentioned this guy came on in the World Series when they won their title in
Yep.
22, 21, 22.
20 was it 20? No,
Was
23,
it
wasn't it?
20?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
23.
23,
23.
23.
Yeah,
Evan Carter looked like an absolute gold mine, and he just
yeah.
hasn't been that really consistent. I'd love to see him take a step. That would make this outfield look really, really scary. Obviously, you got Corey Seager. Josh Jung is another young guy who I thought was going to be a really strong piece of this core moving forward. Yeah, the kid out of Texas Tech. Uh, I remember watching him hit a home run in the College World Series. I was like, "Oh, Josh Jung, that's interesting." And then he made a name for himself. Um, yeah, 23 home runs in that World Series run, and he has just crossed double digits last year. But yeah, he dealing with some injury stuff in 2024. I just love to see more consistency from him. Feel the vibe of some people giving up on him, and I'm just not ready to do that for a guy who hit 24 home runs. He is 28, coming out of college. He's not really on the youngest side, but
Yep.
um, Evan Carter and Josh Jung, if these young guys can step forward, especially with how old the rest of this roster is, that will be a major role in their success in 2026.
Yeah, again, it's I look at this Rangers team, and I wouldn't say the talent is unproven, but it just
Right.
hasn't been around there long enough, right? We haven't seen a full comprehensive season of all these guys healthy together, right? And I think that's what Ranger fans also want to see. They want, right? I think Ranger fans are done saying, "Oh yeah, Evan Carter looks great, and this is what we think we can get out of him, but we're waiting to see if we can get that," right? And again, it's when you're healthy and you're getting reps day in day out, you can still suck. You can still have a bad season, but you're getting those reps, and that will help going forward, especially if you're young, right? And I think what's good too is that the Rangers have shown that they are committed to these guys. They haven't just moved on. They haven't just kind of forgotten about them. They're going to make sure that last year Evan Carter went down and got some work in the minor leagues, and he stayed there, right? But again, this is the core that the Rangers want to put out, and fortunately, again, this is almost the flip side of what we've seen with other teams in the West, is that their pitching is probably the more consistent part, and their hitting is kind of leaves more of those, holes in our heads of what is it going to be? What is this lineup going to look like? What is the production going to look like? Whereas I think the pitching is a lot more solidified, and I think also the Rangers know that. The
Yeah.
Rangers aren't going to the Rangers aren't gonna get into the postseason with a great offense. It's gonna be with their pitching. It's gonna be with healthy pitching. And again, losing Adolis Garcia, does that hurt you in the power department? Sure, but do you lose a lot outside of that other than a fan favorite? Probably not. And it looks like the Rangers again, they have the money to spend. They're willing to go and make those moves. And again, I do think that they are going to contend here in the West this season. So
Yeah, definitely good enough to contend. Wyatt Langford highlights that, and Corey Seager, obviously the top pairing in this lineup. Corey dealing with a little bit of injuries. He's at that time, but again, when he's in the box, he's an absolute weapon. And Wyatt Langford is another guy who had a great year last year. He's a 4-win player, hit 22 bombs, but there's more in the tank. He's he's such a hit. His first round pick is such a hit. I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the table too. Going over to projections, I gotta pull it up here. Probably around where these other teams have been. Going into the 2026 projections, they're going to land at 500. Apparently, Fangraphs does not see much separation between the Rangers and the Astros, finishing with 81 with an 81 and 81 record. Ian, are you over or under, or do you think they hit the hit on the nail?
I think it's right on the nail, to be honest with you. I think it's right on the
81.
nail. Yeah. I think it's right on the nail. I think this Rangers team is good. They look good on paper. They sound good. But again, it's all about if they're all gonna if the lottery tickets are all gonna hit or not, right? I think that's the thing. And this team is just incredibly injury prone. I don't know if I've seen a more injury prone team in the majors the last couple of years. But again, when they're all healthy, when they're all able to check in every day for work and then come to the office 100% or at least 80%, it's a good looking team. Right. But when you lose a couple guys, especially early on in the season, and then it kind of sends you in for a bit of a tailspin. That's how it derails your season. And so I think 500 is a good spot to put them. I wouldn't expect them to go nuts, but I also don't expect them to be a poor team this year.
Yeah, every reason I think of giving this team the over, I look at the rotation, and then I look at the lineup. Like this team can win a couple games in the 80 department. And then the more research you do, the more you dig. like you said, like it's just you start to your palms start to sweat a little bit. You get a little nervous about this team. I'm gonna match you here. I'm gonna say 81 as well. I don't really know where to put this. I'm just gonna kind of sit in the middle and see if I, overreacted to some of this health concern, or maybe
Okay.
I didn't react enough to it. So I'm gonna finish at 80 at 81. That's about it. We went through the entire AL West. Be sure to follow the Rewind on Instagram at the Rewind underscore pod, or on YouTube, the Rewind podcast with Spencer Tracy. Catch up with all of our content. Be sure to follow Ian. Ian, what's the best place to find all your work?
Yeah, no. So you can follow me on Instagram at Ian.Napetian and then Twitter at Ian_Napetian. I'll be posting some stuff there, articles, and then working with the Chihuahuas this year in AAA. So no, should be fun though.
Yeah, definitely follow Ian in his journey with the San Diego affiliate. It's gonna be fun. Ian, thanks so much for having you on. We'll definitely have you on in the future. I want to keep up with your journey down in El Paso, man.
Oh,
It sounds like a
thank
vibe.
you. No, Spencer, appreciate it. Love being on. Love talking baseball, whether it's the West, the A's, or anybody. Baseball talking with you is always the best. So appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.